All right, I think we will get started now. It's midday, so welcome everybody. It's Megan, the brand manager here at Soft Solutions, and with me on the line is Matt, our senior engineer.
Hello.
And the purpose of today's webinar is to look at the unique selling points of 3CX, but more about what we all take for granted. So here at Soft Solutions, we've been using 3CX for almost 10 years now. We don't actually remember life without 3CX as our IP protect. And there's a lot of features there that we just take for granted all the time. So we're going to have a look through some of those key features today to really give that whole overview of what 3CX is about. So these are the key points we're going to cover off in a little bit more detail today, looking at the open platform that is 3CX and the open standards, how easy it is to install and deploy, the easy management, mobility, the work from anywhere. Obviously, that's more important now than ever. The advanced customer services functionality, the fact that it's tried and tested, you know, there's so many installs out there. And then finally, just looking at the unbeatable price, which obviously is always a factor when you're talking about 3CX. All right, so Matt's going to talk us through the open platform, the open standards, the key information here.
Okay, so a really cool thing about 3CX, and definitely a unique and key selling point, is it's an open platform with open standards. There's no proprietary technology or anything like that that's locking you in like these older legacy systems did, where you are having to pay a substantial amount of money to keep it ongoing. So being an open platform, it gives you the ability to have control of your own direct dial numbers or DDIs, and have them registered directly against the system and control how all that is routed. You get to choose your own hardware as well, and that goes for both where you're hosting 3CX, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on a bit of tin, an i5 NUC or something like that, as well as the phones that are used with them. Of course, 3CX, and we'll see this in the slide shortly, has phone manufacturers that undergo interop with them where everything's tested. If you do go to the cloud, you can choose your own cloud provider, whether that's a local DC here in New Zealand via a partner or via Azure or AWS. And the customer is always in control of their phone system. So it's not a ISP or something like that changing how calls are routed randomly, and you think, oh, that's a funny one. That has been a pain point in the past, where a specific ISP in New Zealand was changing things randomly, and there was a lot of troubleshooting, and they actually left and chose 3CX instead, so they could actually have that ability to be fully in control of their own phone system.
And another key point there, Matt, around the customer is when we say customer, sometimes that customer is the end customer that's using 3CX, but sometimes that customer is you, our 3CX partners, because you're actually hosting or leasing the license to your customer. And if that customer, you know, went away for any reason, you would repurpose that license. So when we say customer, we are meaning the person that is in control of their 3CX. So often for our 3CX partners, that's you in control of the customer's PBX. So that's what we're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. So touching on what I mentioned before, so it is extremely easy to deploy. So Megan noted we've been dealing with 3CX for about 10 years now. I've been dealing for about 8.5 years. And it is definitely very easy to install. So the 3CX has their, and this is covered in the intermediate training, their PBX Express tool, I guess you could call it. So you can easily spin up in your own Google, Amazon, or Azure. A lot of people, and a common question I get asked is, where do you see 3CX being deployed? Is it in the cloud or is it on-prem? And it completely depends on the customer. A lot of end users still like to be able to visually be able to see their phone system. So we typically see it on something like an i5 NUC with 8 gig of RAM or something like that with the Debian edition, because it doesn't have that resource overhead that Windows Server does. There is Linux and Windows support, so we've got the Debian edition. Of course, it works on Windows as well. If you do go with the Debian, it's a little more lightweight, and you don't have to have that Windows server licensing cost or desktop licensing cost in there. Plug and play provisioning is available with supported phones. So basically, provided that the network is all spick and span, plug in the phone, it'll send out as multicast broadcast, 3CX will pick it up, and then you can, in a couple of clicks, assign it to an extension. And SIP providers in New Zealand, or worldwide, I guess, have undergone interrupt testing with 3CX, so they're much simpler to set up, and they're officially supported by 3CX as well. Management, of course, with 3CX is very simple. It's a sort of a single pane of glass, and it's gone through multiple iterations to make sure it's easy to work with. And sorry, I know I'm firing through this, but this is a bit of a bite-sized webinar. But it's very easy to add extensions and manage them as well. So they can, of course, be deployed locally or remotely. Locally, very, very simple because it's all on the local LAN. Remotely, they support stun, and they also have a free session border controller, which encrypts and encapsulates traffic, which makes things very simple. Firmware and phone configs are tested by 3CX themselves as well, and they're constantly updating with new templates and firmware. And updates and upgrades can also be deployed automatically. And I've got an asterisk because between major versions, so obviously if you have a 3CX sitting on a Windows 7 box or something like that, 3CX aren't going to enable you to upgrade to Windows 10. So moving between major operating systems, there is some manual intervention in there. But if it is just between service packs or something like that, especially with the Debian edition, they can do that for you, and that is an option within the management console as well. And of course, we see consistent and constant innovation. There's always new things coming with 3CX. They're very good with publishing their roadmap as well of what is coming. So recently we had version 16, update 6 go into alpha, so we're excitedly waiting for the beta of that to see what's new and coming into that as well. And we're always seeing new functionality as well as bug fixes with new additions of 3CX. And of course, that's fantastic when you're on an annual license because you're getting all of that.
Okay, so mobility. This is a key thing, and now more than ever with COVID-19. Yes, in New Zealand we're lucky. Most people are back to what we would call, pretty much normal life. But a lot of people are still choosing to work from home some days and work from an office other days, etc. So 3CX includes your apps for Android and iOS, just available from either the Google Play or the App Store. One of the new features that came out recently in update 5 for version 16 with these new release apps was the ability to hand off between your Wi-Fi and your 3G, 4G network, so calls don't drop as you walk out of the office to jump in your car and carry on with your conversation. So that's a feature that was asked for and has been implemented. Really important. The other thing around ease of use is obviously when 3CX first came out, it was just soft phone, soft phone, soft phone. But since obviously all the apps have come out, and now we see the web client as the key across all platforms within Chrome and Edge. And Matt, do you want to talk a little bit more about the web client and the functionality that 3CX can integrate with that?
Yeah, so going back in the day, the 3CX soft phone when it first came out was based out of Microsoft Silverlight, which we all know has gone end of life ever since. So we have the Windows application there, but the web client really is the future. It's easy to access it for a start. It's part of the welcome email when you send it. Loading it up in a supported browser such as Chrome or Edge, and we mention that because Chrome and Edge are sufficiently WebRTC compliant. What is WebRTC? It's a Google protocol for communication over the internet, a voice basically. And 3CX leverages that fairly heavily. With the web client as well, you have web meeting built in from a single dashboard, so it's very easy to access, and it's very slick. It runs very fast, and it utilizes something called UACSTA. So that's basically the web client can communicate directly with physical phones. So if you punch in a number in the web client, it will actually dial it on your physical phone. So it's very simple.
Absolutely. Other features around the mobility are the built-in chat, the ability to be able to have your remote physical phones enabled by a session border controller. And if you need more details on how to set up an SBC, Matt's your little expert there. In terms of the web meeting that Matt just touched on, your participant numbers in a web meeting are controlled by the edition you have. I've put on this slide the standard licensing. 3CX actually have bumped it up. They've doubled it pretty much for most people at the moment. But this is the stock standard available in the Standard Pro and Enterprise edition. So 25, 100 and 250 participants in any one web meeting. And the other thing of note is also the chat functionality that you can incorporate onto your website. So that's all in there as well.
Definitely, it's so feature rich. So customer service wise, so now we're sort of talking more the Pro and the Enterprise editions of 3CX. So they include the ability to have call queues where you can have extensions acting as agents, where they can be logged in or out of a queue. You can have SLAs built in there as well and have a queue manager who is notified when an SLA has been breached. You have the likes of IVR and digital receptionist functionality. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for a duck to quack. And you also have advanced call reporting in there as well, which of course is very critical with call centers. New reports are always being added by 3CX as well, which sort of goes back on the point we made earlier. There's always new things coming out with every service pack. Call reports PDF of the available reports that 3CX can generate are part of your marketing kit that you can get from your reseller portal as well. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And especially for keeping up to date.
And just jumping in there, just on that marketing kit, there are new tools being added to that. It's available from the resources section of your partner portal. But if you ever think, oh, something like this would be useful or anything like that, do reach out, because often we will know where resources are to share with you. But the call reports PDF details what every report does. So it's a fantastic tool to show people and show them the power of what's available when you are talking to them about 3CX for their business.
Definitely, absolutely. On the right hand side, you can see some of the popular CRM integrations that are currently available. These are tested with 3CX by 3CX and are fairly simple to set up. Internally here, we utilize Zoho CRM, and it was just an absolute breeze to set up. They also have a 3CX API where DIY integration can be built with CRM platforms as well. And of course, we have that ability for the website chat. So there's a WordPress plugin that can be enabled for websites where chat can come through to an agent, and that can actually be elevated into a call from there as well, utilizing WebRTC.
So I mentioned this right at the beginning. 3CX is tried and tested. They have over 250,000 installations and 25,000 partners. Here in New Zealand, we have close to 200 3CX partners across the country. And the nice thing about 3CX is that it's scalable. So it can scale from a very small to a very large office very, very quickly. We have great adoption of 3CX here in New Zealand. As I mentioned at the beginning, and Matt's also mentioned, we've been working with 3CX for almost 10 years now, and the innovation is just huge. It just keeps going, and we always joke internally, if you ever ring anybody that has a 3CX phone system, you know you're talking to a 3CX phone system, because the on-hold music never gets changed by anybody. You can change that on-hold music, but nobody chooses to. So I'm always sitting bopping away to the 3CX on-hold music. The other key thing here is that we support 3CX locally here in New Zealand. So Matt and Kevin, who work in our IT support area, have a great range of knowledge. Matt has 8 years of knowledge, that there's always something in his head coming out to help you. And that is a free service that we offer for that first level support. And then obviously 3CX have global support as well, and that is based on your partnership level as to what level of support you receive. But if in doubt, always call us first.
Definitely, that's what we're here for.
And finally, so I know a lot of people lead with price. I never lead with price. I think that's just the icing on the cake at the end. So the pricing for 3CX is very competitive. As we all know, it is licensed by simultaneous call count, not by user, not by extension. It is any call between point A and point B. So that is internal calling, external calling. Another good reason to use things like web meeting, because then you're not using up your call count. The annual subscription license is the way to go these days. Perpetual licenses are being phased out. You can actually only now buy new enterprise perpetual licenses as they really move into the annual subscription model. You can choose your own SIP provider. There's multiple interop partners here in New Zealand, and if you need any help with that, do reach out. Fast ROI. I mean, everybody's looking for an ROI. So, you know, one of the things I guess we hear from partners is that sometimes their customers go, no, sorry, that's too cheap. It can't do everything we want it to do. I think that's another key thing is there's no add-on costs. There's no extra modules. You choose the right addition for your client, and that is your costs. Obviously, you have hardware, services, and all those types of things which you bundle into it, but there's no hidden costs. If for some reason your client's requirements change, it's very easy to upgrade their simultaneous call count, or it is very easy to move from one edition to the other. And it is prorated for the subscriptions, which means that you get the best offer available at the time around that. So you can reach out to our team at any time if you need to upgrade a client's system. We obviously saw a lot of that during COVID-19 because people's phone systems suddenly got maxed out. But it is there, and it's a nice feature to be able to talk about with your customers that actually we believe this is the right solution for you. The next edition up has X, Y, and Z, and usually that's talking between professional and enterprise. And it gives them that opportunity. And also simultaneous call count, it's not an exact science. I always say go what your gut tells you. You don't want to oversell it. And we've obviously done quite a lot on the simultaneous call count recently as well. Cool. And that is 3CX in a nutshell. So I would call those the top 7 sales points around 3CX. A lot of that functionality we do just take for granted, but we've got to remember that our customers haven't been using 3CX like we have. So if you have any questions, please feel free to pop those in the chat for us, and we will answer those now for you. This webinar will be uploaded onto YouTube later today and available. And as always, you can reach out to us on VoIP at softsoul.co.nz for any queries. Have we got any questions coming through, Matt?
Yes, we got a couple. So firstly, the Cal for Care NX96. So that was a recent blog post by 3CX. We haven't tested the unit internally in-house yet, so I can't comment as to its capabilities. And Megan, you probably agree we don't have pricing for that at this stage?
I don't have confirmed pricing for the unit. It can run up to a 64 simultaneous call 3CX on it. They also have a smaller NX32, which we have tested in-house. They can also be used as SBCs. What we're just trying to work through is the pricing around those units. And they come out of Singapore, so there's obviously additional time and shipping and all those types of things. So we're just working our way through that and what that might look like. And we'll actually probably send out a survey to our partners once we have a bit more information, just to gauge the interest. The key thing there is it's optimized for 3CX. Often a i5 NUC or whatever is being used is being utilised for multiple purposes. So we just have to look at that and see what the best option is.
Definitely. And last question, does it integrate with Xero? I haven't had that question before. Not out of the box with Xero integration, but as I mentioned, that 3CX API is available. So if Xero were keen on working on an integration, they would have the tools there to be able to build it.
And I guess the key thing there would be what sort of integration you'd be looking at between the Xero. I'm assuming you're talking maybe about being able to see which customer's calling you based on their record in the accounting system. So yeah, I mean, it would certainly be something that you could explore. There is some very good documentation about the APIs with CRM integration. I know Xero is not a CRM system as such, but a lot of that information would still be relevant. So yeah, if you haven't got access to that information, reach out and Matt can fire that through to you.
Awesome. I think that's about it.
Fabulous. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We hope you got some value out of today's short bite-sized webinar and just refreshed about how feature-rich 3CX is. And I think that's something that we often take for granted, and I've been spending quite a bit of time reflecting on how feature-rich it is and how those features really help New Zealand customers every day. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next month for another couple of webinars.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.